Good morning, North America. Good afternoon, Europe, and good evening to everyone joining us from India. This is US Election Watch. I'm Allister in Washington, D.C. The headlines. Harris and Trump gear up for events in the battleground state of Michigan. Harris to hold 3 rallies while Trump prepares for a roundtable and a rally. North Carolina election officials hailed Thursday's terrific voting turnout despite storm damage. Georgia saw record numbers when it began early in-person voting Tuesday. Shot in the arm for the Trump campaign, billionaires Elon Musk, Miriam Adelson, and Dick Uihlein channel a total amount of $220 million into the groups supporting Trump. Marking a first, Harris to join the Obamas for voter events in the battleground states of Georgia and Michigan next week. With only 18 days left until Election Day, the race for the U.S. presidency is heating up. According to the ABC News Daily Tracker, Vice President Kamala Harris holds a slim lead over former President Donald Trump, ahead by just 2.4%. But the race is still tight. The forecast suggests Harris is favored to win 54 times out of 100, while Trump wins 46 times out of 100. Now, in key battleground states like Arizona and Pennsylvania, a new CNN poll of polls shows that the contest is neck and neck. The final stretch is, of course, here, and it's going to be a close one. Now, staying with all of that, with regards to the polls, Vice President Kamala Harris is changing her campaign strategy to appeal more to men and Republicans, while also intensifying her sharp attacks on Donald Trump. Democrats reportedly are increasingly worried about poll numbers showing Trump making gains. At a rally in Erie, Pennsylvania, Harris took an unusual step, showing footage of Trump's remarks about an enemy within the country to argue that he is a threat to national security. Now, after weeks of focusing on policy and building her national presence, Harris is seen as returning to a more aggressive posture in her former role as prosecutor. The goal is to show strength to voters who are drawn to Trump's tough image.
Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
My opponent feels like she does not have to be here, which is deeply disrespectful.
With just a little more than 2 weeks left for the final showdown on November 5th, the US presidential race is gathering momentum each day. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris seems to be in a statistical dead heat in swing states with her opponent Donald Trump. Reports suggest that this has prompted her campaign to change strategy to win over more men and Republican voters. According to reports, Democrats are anxious over polls showing Trump making strong gains.
And hello to everyone joining us from exciting Chicago.
Harris started off with a bang. She was able to raise a record amount in a short span of time, had a successful Democratic convention, and was widely hailed as the winner of her only debate with Trump.
President of the United States of America.
But that trajectory seems to have plateaued in the last 1 month. Reuters and Ipsos polling shows that Harris's edge over Trump narrowed from a late September lead of 7 points to just 3. On the other hand, she and Trump are more or less tied in the 7 crucial swing states that will decide the race. Harris' campaign is also focusing on gathering support in the blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which were crucial to Joe Biden's victory last time. According to reports, the sentiment is similar on the Trump side, with top donors saying that former US president just needs to win one of the blue wall states to come back to the White House. Vishal Vivek reports for NDTV World.
Now let's get you more on the race to the White House. We are joined by journalist Ray Locker, also Nish Acharya. He is former advisor to the Biden administration, and Puneet Ahluwalia. He's a Republican strategist. Puneet, let me come to you first. Now, Kamala Harris is seeing her lead narrow with Trump in swing states. We just heard that in this story. Is that really good or bad? Because an immediate reaction, of course, is it's great for Trump. But on the flip side, I'm wondering if this would mean that more Harris voters who may be a bit complacent will get out there now and vote. Ordinarily, they may not have, but now they're going to cast those ballots.
Well, she's in trouble, as we know. She peaked at the moment she came out, and after that's been downhill. And she's had being propped up by the left supportive media, but that has got her only so far because she's such a flawed candidate. Because, again, it's a continuation of Biden's failed presidency, which she's trying to inherit, and she's trying to distance herself from that. And on the other side, the issues on inflation, the cost of business, the concerns on immigration, the safety and security of American people, and more importantly, how much the cost of eggs and a gallon of milk cost are really hurting the people. And the economy is a big concern. And I think they all remember the good times under President Trump, how he navigated out of COVID, how successful the stock market was, and at the same time, there was peace in the world.
Okay.
So these are things people are concerned about. And Harris has a big issue. She's not being able to break through on her policies or her stance, and most importantly, on the way she's viewed on the international stage. So there is a problem, and there's always a blame game going on in the 7 place states between her staff, because they want to find someone who they're going to basically hold responsible when she loses. So there's a big concern, and people know that she's a leftist because she's left of Bernie Sanders. So there is concern, and now people are starting to see, and that's the reason why Trump is starting to go ahead.
Got it. Ray, how would you view these latest poll numbers? I know we're still some days away, but perhaps a silver lining here for the Harris campaign, getting those voters out on the final day on November 5th?
Well, I would just, first of all, challenge the way that the premise of this whole discussion. I mean, it makes it seem like she's cratering and they're flailing around trying to find a new strategy. Yes, she was up by 7 in some polls, and now she's up by 3. I would say that she was never really up by 7 points at all. I'd say 3 to 4 is a decent margin, what you're seeing now. Another thing is, when you talk about a poll of polls, it's kind of like eating that hamburger you buy at the store that's in a tube. It's the bunch of garbage put into one package. And so what you've seen, and you saw it 2 years ago, a lot of Republican-leaning polls flooding the market that skew this average. And you should never be combining results of various polls into one poll, because you don't know the methodology of all these polls. So my advice, find a poll that you count, that you trust, and keep following it and see what the changes are there. And finally, if you're a candidate, whether it's Harris or Trump, and you're not running scared, you're an idiot, because you get complacent now, you're going to lose. And I don't see complacency. Finally, you see that she's going after men and Republicans. That's an indication that she's doing well with Democrats and women. She's going after the core strengths of her opponent. And so I think you're seeing more of that now.
Nish, how would you digest all these polls? Like Ray was saying, we're getting one every second day. CNN talking about its poll of polls. As a Democrat, how would you view these latest numbers in this final stretch of the race?
So thank you so much for that. I would make 3 points. First, to our colleague from Virginia, if Harris and Biden were so bad, then why isn't Trump up by so much more? And why is he losing in so many states? So either Biden and Harris are not so bad, or Trump is significantly disliked. And that's why the race is so close. So I think we have to be honest about what's going on here in terms of the candidates themselves. There is a lot of people who really like Harris. There's concerns about the state of the world, about the overall global economy, wars in different places. And people are right to consider those things when they make their choices. Ultimately, I think they will trust Harris to make better choices on all of these things than Trump. And that's why I think she'll win. I think the two other points to remember is one is the uniqueness of the U.S. system.
Right.
And particularly since most of your viewers are in India, the U.S. system is state by state. It's by electors, which represent the elected Congress and the Senate. And so it's not that this is a close race nationally. Harris is probably going to win the popular vote by 7-8 million people advantage. It's that in these particular states, it is close, and it's a winner-take-all system for getting the delegate. And so it's critical. And then last thing I'll say here is that right now it's no longer about the polls. So I think paying attention to the polls this close is irrelevant. Now it is about get out the vote, and it's about probably 200,000 volunteers on the Biden-Harris side that are going to be mobilizing voters to actually vote. That's what matters now, not anything else.
I hope they're legal voters.
Ray, Nish, and Puneet, thank you very much indeed for your time. Sorry, unfortunately running out of time there. We'll try and get you back at some point in time within these next 2 weeks, and we can further talk about this, but need to leave it there at this point in time. Let's take a look now at other news. Ashwin Ramaswamy is an Indian-American Democrat running for state Senate in Georgia. In a video message on X, Ramaswamy claims his political opponent, Senator Sean Still, he's accusing Sean Still of racism and also posing a threat to his life and his family's life. We are going to go to Sean Still, who's the Republican incumbent, the state senator of Georgia. But before that, let's listen in to what Ramaswamy had to say in that Twitter or X video that he put out.
Today, I'm going public with Sean Still's racist and hateful attacks. Look at these mailers. Public notice, parents beware. If you see Ashwin Ramaswamy call the sheriff's office, deepfake images about, quote, soliciting children, look, it's completely patriotic to organize young people to come out and vote. Sean Still's mailers are full of lies. There was absolutely no request for contact information and no invasion of privacy. By the way, I'd know. I specialized in privacy and security at law school. I hold a top secret security clearance from the federal government. And I used to work in the state attorney general's office, protecting our children online. Sean Still, who is criminally indicted, represents the worst of America. He abused his power to impersonate the sheriff's office, darkened my skin, and asked people to call the cops on me, his political opponent. Let me repeat. Sean Still asked people to call the cops on a person of color because he dared to challenge him, and because Sean Still is too afraid to lose this election. My family and I have been facing death threats. We've had to face fears for the security of me, my family, and all the young people throughout our campaign. Parents, how would you feel if your son or daughter stepped up to serve this great nation and your state senator, who's supposed to represent you, went around calling them a pedophile? What a disgrace, an insult to our communities and our constituents. My parents came here from India because they believed in the American dream, that no matter where you come from, no matter your background, if you work hard and serve this community, you can achieve success. We must not forget the American dream. There is no place for hatred in our community, and enough is enough. We must all come together to condemn Sean Still's hatred and bigotry. Sean Still is trying to tear young people down and trying to crush the hopes and dreams of young people and Gen Z. We cannot let that happen.
Now, we did try to reach out to Ashwin, but we haven't been able to reach him. We'll try to get more from him later on, but we do have with us State Senator of Georgia, Sean, still with us. Sean, you heard that video, some rather disturbing accusations. What do you have to say to that?
First of all, thank you for having me on. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to join your network, so I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me a chance to set the record straight. First and foremost, Mr. Ramaswamy is grossly misstating a mailer that was done by an independent third party that I never saw until it hit mailboxes. It was not done by my campaign. It was done by some outside group. I saw the mailer. Most of Georgia Democratic leadership from his party saw it. They laughed at it. Ramaswamy did, and you can verify this with an open records request to the Fulton County school system. In January of this year, he made a request under his own name to request the names of every student, over 5,000 of them, from the schools, all the students, not just seniors who are 18 and eligible to vote, every one of them.
Right, Sean.
Second,
Sean, we get that, but I do understand that you did say that this has come from a third party, but what are you going to do about this? Clearly, this is coming from supporters, from people that support you. Is there any sort of message that you'd like to send out to them that this kind of these kind of mailers, this kind of information, it's misleading and is unacceptable?
If we want to talk about misleading and unacceptable, he made requests to get kids information. He solicited to get minors information. He wanted to get information about young children as young as 13 years old. That is unacceptable in any democracy, to be soliciting children to try to convince them on how to think and how to vote. So no, what he's doing is wrong. The mailer that went out didn't impersonate police. He is a liar and he is a fraud. Ramaswamy lives in his parents' basement and he doesn't even have a job. So to compare him to someone who is an adult with actual responsibilities in life, it is difficult to be able to look at that and think that he's doing something that's for the good of our children. If you're doing something for the good of our children, let them decide on their own. You don't have to solicit them. But as far as hateful mail, yesterday, he dropped a mailer about me saying that I'm killing Georgia women about a vote.
Sean, I'm afraid we're running out of time here.
Never happened.
Sean, thank you very much indeed for your time here on NDTV's US Election Watch. That was Georgia State Senator Sean Still there responding to comments, allegations from Ashwin Ramaswamy, saying that he was threatened, his family was threatened after these flyers went out that were racist, and actually even calling him a pedophile or insinuating as such. We'll keep tabs on that story. We'll try and get more from Ashwin when we are able to reach him. In other news now, it's been 3 months since the assassination bid against former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Now an independent panel reviewing the Secret Service's failures has called on the agency to replace its leadership with people from the private sector. The recommendations, a part of a report commissioned by Homeland Security, outline security lapses that resulted from an absence of what they called critical thinking amongst agents and supervisors. This is the first assessment that bluntly identify failures on the part of senior agents on Trump's personnel and personnel details there. Now, in other news, how will the events in the last 24 hours change the course of the war in the Middle East. US President Joe Biden says the killing of Yahya Sinwar in Gaza raises the prospect of a ceasefire in the war that has gone on for over a year. Sinwar was the mastermind in the attack on Israel that shocked the world. It unleashed a battle which has no end in sight, with fears of a larger regional war still a huge concern. Sinwar was top of the hit list for the Israel Defense Forces. He was Hamas's top commander. All of this happening as worries continue about an imminent attack by Israel on Iran. Iran has long backed Hezbollah in Lebanon and has also strengthened groups like Hamas in Gaza. Now, to talk more about this, we're joined by Amy McKinnon. She is National Security and Intelligence Reporter at Foreign Policy magazine. Thanks very much, Amy, for your time this morning. Now, Amy, Sinwar has been Hamas's leader inside Gaza since 2017, dominating the group's military wing. In your latest article, you've said that his younger brother is likely to succeed him. Tell us a little bit more about Junior Sinwar, if you like. Would he be someone that the current administration in the US and, of course, the next administration will be able to influence?
Well, there's, of course, a lot of speculation now as to what's going to happen to Hamas and its leadership following Sinwar's death earlier this week. And there's a number of members of the group that people are now looking to as potential successors of Sinwar. One, as you mentioned, is his younger brother, Mohammed, who was, de facto leader of the military wing of the group following the assassination of its former military leader earlier this year, Mohammed Deif. Now, the junior Sinwar worked closely with his brother, and he is regarded to very much be, according to experts, just as cold-blooded and ruthless as the elder Sinwar. So there's certainly no expectation that the group could really change its posture if he were to ascend to a leadership role. But analysts that I've spoken to have also said that Mohammed Sinwar may struggle to unify Hamas. He may struggle to command and control the remaining fighters that they do have after a year of war. There's, of course, a couple of other options of people who could succeed from the political wing in Doha. But again, there's a lot of questions about whether outside of the Gaza Strip, whether they will be able to exert much authority over fighters on the ground.
And one of those questions, the big one here, what happens to those hostages, some of those 100 hostages that still remain in Gaza? Sinwar's death, how does that now impact the release of those hostages?
Well, we're hearing a lot of urgency from hostage families who really see this as a potentially extraordinarily dangerous moment for their loved ones that remain in Gaza. Now with the group decapitated, with the death of Sinwar and a leadership vacuum, there's a lot of questions over, who is deciding the fate of these hostages, who's deciding where they're held, who's deciding what happens to them. And if the group does decide to lash out, could that potentially mean killing further hostages in the coming days? So there's certainly a lot of fear and a lot of sense of urgency that now is the time to get a deal. That's what a lot of the hostage families have been speaking about for months, of course, but particularly now in this crucial moment.
Right, thanks very much indeed, Amy. We have to leave it there for now. Amy there from Foreign Affairs, from Foreign Policy magazine. That's it for now on US Election Watch. I'm Allister in Washington, D.C.